Welcome to a special vigil in the sun with yours truly. Special emergency vigil, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Labrador, and the Atlantic Canada. I'm gonna face the sun, thinking of in the back of me is the East, Atlantic Canada, and I'm saluting the workers, those involved in relief efforts, emergency efforts. So this is gonna be a special emergency cup of coffee on this Sabbath, and this is gonna be a mind training of the mind, first exploring the training the mind while reading, educating about Nova Scotia, educating about the Atlantic, what's called aka the Maritime provinces. And if you don't mind, I'm just gonna take the shirt off because I want to get some sun, and it is close to 18, and of course the temperature is dropping considerably. I want to get some sun now as I can, so I'm gonna take off this red shirt which I am auctioning for the Dragan Army. So this is part of the Dragan Army special ongoing operation event, dedication to continuing relief efforts in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, the Maritimes, what's known of course as the Maritime provinces. In the back of me is the East, facing the sun because the sun is now in the west. It's already past 1 o'clock as I'm having this cup of coffee emergency. I'm grateful, thankful that my rent is paid in full, fully paid my rent, fully paid my electricity bill as well, fully paid both my rent and electricity bill, those duties, obligations, and responsibilities which we have. Please, brothers and sisters, use hand soap, sanitizer, wash, disinfect with soap and water, disinfect with soap and water, disinfect. Or hand sanitizer. I'm open carrying my hand sanitizer, and I stepped outside in the public. Right now, I'm no longer just private citizen. I could have stayed home in my private quarters, could have just stayed in my nakedness, danced naked on Tekashi 6ix9ine music, Madonna music, or Kanye West music. And of course, now I stepped outside, I put some clothes on, got some clothes on me, So I'm not naked, but nonetheless, I am in the public, so we have added responsibilities and dimensions when we step outside, of our, such as I've stepped, yours truly, Dragan Zero, Adrian Hanna, Dragan stepped out of the room, office, and temple, which to that trinity of serving as a room, as an office, as a temple, also served as my gymnasium for the past years during COVID, where I've lost more than 77 pounds down, developed some muscle, some brain as well, by reading, training, exercising. We're going to train the brain now in this cup of coffee because I want to get some sun, and I'm meditating on what's happening in the Atlantic Maritime provinces, and I'm imagining myself being there with the Dragan Army, where I call to all to establish this new public and private partnership, binational in throughout North America, as the NHL, National Hockey League, and the NBA are, of course, and we have many binational NORAD, the North American Defense, of course, the Dragan Army, officially to be called International Citizen Integrated Social Security and Service Force, which have been advocating, calling for during COVID, and of course for emergency relief, such as now is an ongoing storm hit at 3 a.m. The storm hit the Maritimes, and my thoughts. And I'm a universal spiritual teaching student. I have questions. I have lived many past lives, many incarnations. My belief in reincarnation, and that this Mother Nature, of course, is divine, holy, and sacred. As, of course, I have many questions. I don't know all about spirituality. I say God and Goddess. I say the word Goddess, Goddess, and you can see these majestic, beautiful trees are 3 times, 4 times, 6 times, even 7 times my size, and I say that they're hairs on the goddess's body. Regardless, I can put that aside and put all that aside and for emergency situation and for the greater good, which I am. And although I do have temperaments, I'm living in an economic, financial, commercial crisis. I admit I'm living in a commercial, financial, economic crisis. I'm living in an economic, financial, commercial crisis. I got $10,000 in debt to the RBC that I owe. I got $2,200 that the government of Quebec maybe is asking me back. I gotta check the mails soon and check my mail. But I'm grateful, thankful that my rent is paid in full, my electricity bill is paid in full. I've fully paid my rent and electricity. I've fulfilled my duty, obligation, and responsibility to pay my rent for September, pay my electricity bill. So I can do this video with clean, renewable, zero emission energy in solidarity with the Maritimes Atlantic provinces on this special Sabbath, the Sabbath of the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom. And later off, we're gonna do some workouts. I'm gonna do a special Sabbath. During the Sabbath, usually I do not work out, but I'm gonna work out, special train this Sabbath due to the emergency situation. We're gonna hold some drills, and we're gonna work out and train and exercise in my room, office, and temple, imagining after I train the mind, and we're gonna educate ourselves about the Atlantic provinces, which I visited with my anonymous sister a few years ago. I visited Nova Scotia, Halifax with my anonymous sister. I've visited Nova Scotia a few years ago, and so I fell in love with the place where I was, and not that close to Halifax, a few miles away, like 37 miles, 42 miles, or maybe even more miles away, kilometers, like more than 30 kilometers from this Halifax, about maybe 30 kilometers. I don't know, about maybe more or less, maybe less than 30 kilometers or 30 miles. But nonetheless, I was in Halifax, and we visited for a few days. We stayed, and it was a great trip as we crossed Canada, coast to coast, cross Canada, coast to coast, cross Canada, coast to coast. And that was the best trip I ever had that I can remember. Of course, I lost a lot of memory from my youth, adolescence, early adulthood, early childhood, and yours truly being reborn with a new CV, new curriculum vitae, new CV that put in more philosophical, intellectual, educational, physical, artistic, spiritual work than all the leaders of the free world combined. I put in more spiritual, educational, artistic, political, educational, spiritual, and philosophical work than all the leaders of the free world combined during COVID. Have put in more physical, educational, artistic, poetic, spiritual, educational, and even physical, of course, and spiritual work than all the leaders of the free world combined, while also marched in steel-toe boots more than all the generals of the free world combined marched in steel-toe boots more than all the generals of the free world combined marched in steel-toe boots more than the generals of NATO combined during COVID. Yours truly, Dragon Zero, this one, Adrian Hanna, Dragon Androgynous, pansexual founder of the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom that I'm calling all willingly living to support the mission, vision, and philosophy thereof. In this special sun edition, in the back of me is, of course, the east, the Atlantic, maritime provinces. In front of me, of course, facing the sun is the west. So coast to coast Canada on this supposedly the biggest storm to hit Canada. Supposedly the biggest storm to hit Canada. Supposedly the biggest storm to hit Canada, Fiona. And thus I dedicate this cup of coffee to the ones affected in the Maritimes, and of course to the ones who are doing the emergency to protect our fellow citizens, to protect our fellow citizens, to protect our fellow citizens, and of course to rebuild, or of course protect and secure, safeguard, and safeguard what's the cities and the population. First and foremost, the population of the foremost, the population of the first and foremost, the population. Because brothers and sisters, of course, we all have nice cars and vehicles. At the end of the day, they are metal on wheel. At the end of the day, they are metal on wheel. At the end of the day, they are metal on wheel. And the precious thing, as my philosophy is, that this body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. This body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. This body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. And how do we invest in the body? By working out, training, and exercising. By working out, training, and exercising. By working out, training, and exercising. That's how we invest and have invested in the body. Created my own workout training program, which I've performed more than 295 sessions. 3 more sessions to go until, of course, I reach 300 sessions. 3 more sessions to go until I reach 300 sessions. 3 more sessions to go until I reach 300 sessions of that workout training program. And of course, now that same brain and muscle that built, that maintains, and hopefully upgrades civilization, that same brains and muscle which built, maintains, or upgrades civilization that built the brains and muscle which build Canada, of course, such as the 63 dams across this province of Quebec for us to have utilized clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy, for me to have my iPhone plugged in, my laptop, and all the electricity that I'm using to look at the news, to look at the news for Nova Scotia comes from clean, renewable, zero pollution emission. And those 63 dams as well were built with brains and muscle, as the farms, the roads, and all this building here, the concrete building of this sport complex, this arena sports complex, was built with brains and muscle. So building, maintaining, and upgrading, hopefully towards the starlights, satellites, and of course spacecraft and space exploration will further develop our civilization and come together for world peace. While I do acknowledge, of course, that we have things to break impasses, and things to fix and upgrade. My own room, house, and temple, I cleaned a little bit this morning. I could do some more cleaning. I could have done some more during the week. I could always do more. So it requires doing. My own healing has required action, as it will. Some brains and muscle, and now brains and muscle is required in Nova Scotia. Brains and muscle in the Maritime, the Atlantic provinces, in Nova Scotia, in Halifax, in Labrador. Of course, it touched down in Nova Scotia at around 3 a.m. this morning. The storm Fiona. And some brains and some muscle, how to diverge the waters, how to protect the people first, the citizens first, then the property, the people first, citizens first, the bodies of the citizens, and the property thereafter. It will require some brain and muscle to move sandbags, to move XYZ food, to put on the buildings, on the houses, right, so that the glass doesn't shatter, the glass doesn't shatter when it breaks, right? Because there could be shattering of the glass due to the winds and the storms and the residue, maybe the trees, right? To secure the trees, to get the trees cleared, so to get the trees, or if the log fell and it's a danger of the collapse of the house, to cut it and push it away, or to with a power line. So it takes brain and muscle. Now in Nova Scotia, Halifax, Labrador, it takes brain and muscle, as it has taken some brains, sometimes more brains and other times more muscle. Then hey, merci beaucoup. Ben merci. Qu'est-ce qui se passe en Nouvelle-Écosse?
En Nouvelle-Écosse?
T'as-tu vu ça?
Non, j'ai pas vu.
Ouais, c'était un désastre avec Fiona, là.
Fiona?
Ouais, le Fiona, ouais, c'est ça. C'était la grosse tempête, là.
Ok, ouais.
T'es en train de m'imaginer, là, c'est le bordel, supposément la tempête la plus grosse qui a jamais touché le Canada.
Ah ouais? Non, c'est quand ça a passé dans les nouvelles, ça?
C'est à 3 h du matin que Fiona a touché la Nouvelle-Écosse. C'est dans les nouvelles, là, tu vois, c'est...
Ouais, c'est ça, je travaille, j'ai pas eu le temps de voir ça.
Ouais.
Mais, ouais, y a eu bien du dégât?
Je sais pas, mais moi, j'aimerais ça être là à aider le monde, man.
C'est clair.
C'est clair, tabarnak! Mais bon, je suis ici, man.
Ouais.
Fait que je pense à eux autres.
Mais les maisons, ils ont... Il y a des maisons détruites et tout ça?
Ouais, je pense que ça a commencé là avec les arbres, tout ça, tomber ces maisons. Puis... Mais moi, je pousse la population parce que, tu sais, la propriété et tout ça, ça peut être reconstruite, là.
Ouais. La santé,
mais c'est le monde, tu sais.
Ouais.
Un fan des Canadiens?
Je suis un fan des Canadiens.
Commence 26?
Non, je pense la saison peut-être.
Ouais, le 26, je pense.
Mais pas le Canadien, je pense que le Canadien c'est début octobre, là, mais.
Ouais.
Le 26, je pense, parce qu'il y a des équipes qui vont jouer des games en Europe au début de saison. Là. Il va y avoir des matchs en Europe. On va essayer de vendre le.
En Europe, man.
Essayer de vendre le produit là-bas.
Ouais. Ah, je regarde pas la pré-saison tellement, là. Mais quand on est allé en finale contre le Lightning, tabarnak, j'étais là, man.
Non, moi aussi, c'est sûr.
Moi, j'ai jamais vécu ça dans ma vie, là. J'étais un millénaire, là. J'ai jamais vécu ça, les Canadiens qui vont en finale, là.
Moi, j'ai vécu...
C'était la première fois.
J'ai vécu en 89, en 86.
Pas moi,
en 93,
moi,
mais j'étais jeune en 89, 86, mais en 93, là, je me rappelle, j'avais 13-14 ans.
Ok, plus vieux que moi un peu.
J'ai 45.
Ok. Ouais, t'as vécu Patrick Roy quand il était dans le but?
Ouais.
C'est lui qui a gagné la coupe, la dernière.
93 à 86, ouais.
Oh, tabarnak, non, j'ai pas vécu ça, j'étais trop jeune, moi.
Ouais, j'étais un fan de hockey.
Oh, wow, man. T'étais en finale canadien, wow, c'est vrai, j'ai vu ça, ouais.
Mais je suis quand même content, tu sais. C'est comme, oui, on a perdu, mais c'était quand même fun.
Ouais.
Aussi loin, là, pour
ils ont fait le best, là.
Ouais, ils ont battu Vegas.
Ouais, Vegas, ouais, c'était 7e game, là. C'était 3-3, 4 en finale, là. C'était bad.
Non, c'était incroyable. On va espérer que cette année, mais cette année, on n'a pas de chance. On est vraiment une équipe.
Vegas, c'était Fleury d'un but.
Il y avait Fleury qui a gaulé, ouais.
C'était un Québécois.
Ouais.
Fleury, man. Il est bon, esti.
Bon, lui, il est à Minnesota cette année. Il a signé 1 an au Minnesota.
Quoi son contrat, c'est quoi?
1 an, 3,5 millions.
Esti, j'espère qu'il donne la sécurité pour... qu'il donne 10% aux affamés de la province, man.
J'espère.
En tout cas, je vais pas te déranger, là, mais... Merci pour ton travail.
Merci à toi.
J'apprécie. Et une canette de Budweiser, s'il te plaît.
Ok. C'est dur de le voir parce qu'il y a tellement de.
Ouais. Je sais pas pourquoi ils ne font pas. Il y a bien des poubelles à la place, là. Il y en a bien, là. Puis les canettes, tu sais, ça peut être des jeunes qui jouent avec, puis... Ou des écureuils qui se bouffent.
Ouais, ça, c'est ça. Ok, mon ami, passe une belle journée.
Je te souhaite la meilleure, la santé, puis...
La santé, c'est le best. Toi aussi, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. So I'm continuing the vigil for the Nova Scotia. I've just spoken a little bit with a fellow city worker who's doing a good job here cleaning the... We appreciate the work, we appreciate the work, we appreciate the work for cleaning up cans. You know, there's a lot of cans and that people leave in the public park, and we have a responsibility in the public, right? Because the public is our common space. The public is our common space. This public is our common space here. This whole public here, I'm not gonna leave anything. I'm not gonna leave anything. So I spoken a little bit of French. That was a little bit of French, and I spoken about Nova Scotia, and we spoke some Habs when they went in finals. If you don't understand French, well, I'm a Quebecer as well. I'm a Quebecois. I'm a Quebecer as well. I'm a Canadian, North American, North American, North American. And I'm here in the sun. I'm doing a vigil for Nova Scotia. And I just saluted a fellow city worker whom I appreciate his work. City workers for the maintenance, and the cleanliness of our public spaces, right? Because these are public spaces. This, I don't mind a little bit of grown like this. It's a bit overgrown here, but I mean, it's okay. I like it. A little bit of nature. We have to have balance between nature and civilization. So he was doing a good thing for nature as well, not just for cleanliness. Because he picked up a few cans. Can of Budweiser. Don't mind you drinking. I don't want to see drinking or making love in public. I'm all for drinking, having fun. Look at it be. Having fun in public. But please, there's plenty of garbages. There's plenty of garbages. You can put it in the garbage to the east. You can put it in the garbage to the west. You can put it in plenty of garbages around. So, and for the kids, for the children's sake, because they can go with the foot in it, and they could get the foot, and then it could hurt the foot, could hurt the toes, or the squirrel. So we need balance between civilization and nature, and for balance, harmony between civilization and nature, and for balance between civilization and nature. And we spoke a little bit French. I enjoyed it. I thanked him, and then I saw that, hey B, I'm gonna help the bee out. He drank a little bit of coffee, the bee. I was gonna need to get some sun. See the bee there? He drank some coffee. It fell in the coffee. I took it out with a spoon, and now it's marching. Oh, it flew, it healed. And so for Nova Scotia, the Nova Scotians now are building with brains and muscle, are rebuilding the properties or what needs to be done there with brains and muscle, because it's going to require some muscle, just like this gentleman here, fellow city worker. Thank you with picking up all the garbages and picking up some cans, of which I've showed him because he was underneath, and it's not easy to see. It was a Budweiser can, there was Pepsi cans, there was other cans, plastic, and of course it requires. So we got to thank our fellow citizens, all workers of the collective North American civilization, this independent artist, independent activist, independent athlete, AAA, independent athlete, independent activist, and independent artist, plus other dimensions to that trinity of being an artist, being an activist, being a AAA artist, activist, artist, activist, athlete. The AAA plus other dimensions, whatever I am as a universal spiritual teaching student with some brain and some muscle, who's not perfect, far from it. I do admit my own faults. I do admit my own little things. I actually, last night after the Sabbath, I watched a little bit of adult movies, a little bit of, not much. I didn't click on any. I just checked a little bit. And yes, I don't play self-righteous, so no need to spy on me. RCMP, ceases. CSIS, Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, CSIS. No need to spy on me. CIA, CIA, NSA. I watched a little bit of 10 minutes, 15 minutes of our movie, but I set a discipline and a rule and a regulation that I will only watch during the Sabbath, which the Sabbath begins at midnight Friday and ends at 3 p.m. Sunday. That's when the Sabbath begins, at midnight Friday, and it ends, well, the bee's back, and it ends Sunday. So I put a discipline and a rule and a regulation that will only watch pornography, adult movies during the Sabbath. So now, for world peace, I can film some POR in myself. For world peace, I can film some POR in myself. For world peace, I can film some. So it's part of us. We need it. XYZ. We balance and harmony and accepting our natures and channeling the aggression. Two key words of my philosophy is channeling and sublimating the aggression and the forces, whether aggression or sexuality. Not to repress it because it will make us sick and disease, but to channel and sublimate. Channel and sublimate. Not to make us sick and disease, to channel and sublimate our aggression, our violence, our impulses, but aggression and sexuality, because force is required. Just like now, brains and muscle. Thank you. Brains and muscle with now. Brains and muscle is required for Nova Scotia. Brains and muscle is required for Nova Scotia. So salute with a cup of coffee. I'm gonna do some reading. Before I thank you, love you, kiss you, the workers, the farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you from Canada, U.S., Mexico, throughout the collective North American civilization. Thank you, kiss you, love you, farmers. Look, the bee's back. See, I wasn't lying. The bee's there. You see the? It's not a bee. It's a bee. It's a bee. See? If you want more coffee, it's not good for you, honey. It's not good for you, honey. Bee makes honey. Thank you, love you, kiss you. We kiss and love the bee. We kiss and love the bee. Ah, because I put sugar, maybe. See, the bee's there. Thank you, love you, kiss you, the bee. See, the bee's there. I'm gonna do some art. Just sticks around. Let me do some art now. If it's gone, it's gone. It's gonna come back. If it's not gonna come back. So thank you, love you, kiss you, workers of Hydro-Quebec. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, butchers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Food is essential, building, maintaining, and upgrading civilization, because everybody gotta eat. Everybody gotta eat. Everybody gotta eat. So thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, butchers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, truckers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, grocery store clerks. Thank you, love you, kiss you, dairy workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, construction workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, workers of the city. Thank you, workers Hydro-Quebec. Thank you, workers in the warehouses, those unloading trucks now, those loading and unloading trucks, east, west, north, south, those workers in grocery store clerks, workers in bus drivers, warehouses, workers, those in railways, workers, all the general workers of the collective North American civilization. Love you, kiss you, hug you. And the bee's back. The bee's back. The bee's back. Bee's back. It's okay. Oh, not in my eye. Not in my eye, please. Oh, the bee's back. We're gonna do some art. Returning to the priestess, to the goddess. Ah, he doesn't want it. He doesn't want it, doesn't want it. Cheers for world peace. So once again, thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers, throughout the collective North American civilization. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, butchers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, butchers and bakers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, butchers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, grocery store clerks. Thank you, love you, kiss you, the farmers, the butchers, the truckers, the grocery store clerks, the nurses, the doctors, the grocery store clerks, the butchers, the bakers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, train conductors. Thank you, love you, kiss you, railway workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, railway workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, train conductors. Thank you, love you, kiss you, butchers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, bakers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, railway workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, all the cooks, all the butchers and the bakers and the nurses and the daycare workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, train conductors. Thank you, love you, kiss you, warehouse workers. Thank you, love you, kiss you, bus drivers. Thank you, all workers of the railways. Thank you, those unloading the trucks. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers and firefighters and security workers and the public security. Thank you, city workers, sanitation workers, those who picked up the garbage, those who pick up the compost, those who pick up the compost and the garbage, and those who pick up all the compost and the garbage and the recycling, and those who will pick up the compost, the garbage and the recycling. Thank you, love you, kiss you, farmers and the butchers. And thank you, grocery grocery store clerks, thank you, love you, kiss you. The farmers, thank you, love you, kiss you. The butchers, the bakers, thank you, love you, kiss you. All workers in sanitation of the city, thank you, love you, kiss you. All doctors, nurses, thank you, love you, kiss you. Those train conductors, the pilots and freight trains, thank you, love you, kiss you. All the workers across the collective North American civilization, thank you, love you, kiss you. Hug you, workers, the collective North American civilization. Nova Scotia, once again, thank you, love you. Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. We're going to be reading the Atlantic provinces. So the Atlantic provinces, we're going to read about the Atlantic provinces, Atlantic Canada, that is. Atlantic Canada. So Atlantic Canada is the Maritimes and is the east coast of Canada. It comprises Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Island, and of course New Brunswick. And we're going to read about New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and Nova Scotia in about a second. One more, thank you, love you, kiss you. Workers in sanitation of the city, love you, kiss you, hug you. Farmers, love you, kiss you, thank you, love you, kiss you. Farmers, thank you, love you, kiss you. Truckers, thank you, love you, kiss you. Butchers, thank you, love you, kiss you. Nurses, thank you, love you, kiss you. Bakers, thank you, love you, kiss you. Grocery store clerks, thank you, love you, kiss you. Workers in railways, railroad workers, train conductors, bus drivers, those unloading and loading the trucks, thank you, love you, kiss you. Truckers, ya rock, thank you, love you, kiss you. Truckers, ya rock, thank you, love you, kiss you. Truckers, ya rock, thank you, love you, kiss you. Daycare workers, thank you, love you, kiss you. Nurses, grocery store clerks, those working, construction, sanitation workers of the city for the maintenance, the cleanliness, such as this young citizen who passed and who cleaned and shared a few words with in French here in Montreal, Quebec. And I asked him about if he knows any news about Nova Scotia and about Newfoundland and Maritimes, because it's supposedly the biggest storm that ever hit Canada. It might be the biggest storm. We're yet to confirm that, but it might be the biggest storm to hit Canada. So I'm going to do this video. We're going to start now reading about Nova Scotia. Ready, set, hut, hut. Nova Scotia, French Nouvelle-Écosse, Gaelic Albanois. This is one of the 13 provinces and territories of Canada. My thoughts and feelings are for the Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia, go, go, go. Get the brains and muscles. Save people, save people, save people. Part of my ongoing scenario. Dedicating scenario, emergency scenarios. It is one of the 3 maritime provinces and one of the 4 Atlantic provinces. Nova Scotia is Latin for New Scotland. Nova Scotia is Latin for New Scotland. It is one of the 3 maritime provinces, what's called the maritime provinces, and one of the 4 Atlantic provinces, because the Atlantic, it also comprises Newfoundland and Labrador, the whole Atlantic, which is in the back of me. So New Scotia is Latin for New Scotland. Most of the population are native English speakers, and the province population is 969,383, so close to a million according to the 2021 census. So according to last year's census, population is close to a million in Nova Scotia, where I've been. I visited and I loved it. It is the most populous of Canada's Atlantic provinces. It is the country's second most densely populated province and the second smallest province by area, both after Prince Edward Island. Its area of 55,284 square miles. That is 21,000 kilometers. That is 21,345 square miles, and it is 55,284 square miles. Includes Cape Breton Island and 3,800 other coastal islands. The peninsula that makes up Nova Scotia's mainland is connected to the rest of North America by the Isthmus, I-S-T-H-M-U-S of Chignecto, C-H-I-G-N-E-C-T-O, on which the province land border with New Brunswick is located. The province borders the Bay of Fundy and Gulf of Maine to the west and the Atlantic Ocean to the south and east, and is separated from Prince Edward Island and the island of Newfoundland by the New Northumberland and Cabot Straits, respectively. The island that comprises what is Nova Scotia was inhabited by Mi'kmaq. Mi'kmaq. M-I, little virgula, K-M-A-Q. Mi'kmaq people of the time. Yeah, Mi'kmaq people at the time of European exploration. In 1605, Acadia, France's first New France colony. Acadia, l'Acadie, was France's new first colony. Acadia was France's new colony. In 1605, that was more than 400 years ago. Acadia, France's first New France, Nouvelle France, New France colony, was founded with the creation of Acadia's capital, Port Royal, like a port. Britain fought France for the territory on numerous occasions for over a century afterwards. The fortress of Louisbourg was a key focus point in the battle for control. Following the Great Upheaval, 1755-1763, where the British deported the Acadians en masse. The conquest of New France, 1758-1760, by the British, and the Treaty of Paris, 1763. France had to surrender Acadia to the British Empire. France had to surrender Acadia during British Empire. So Acadia was there, part of what's now Nova Scotia, Nouvelle Scotia. And during the American Revolutionary War, 1775-1783. American Revolutionary War lasted, of course, about 8 years, right? 1775-1783. And thousands of loyalists settled in Nova Scotia. In 1848, Nova Scotia became the first British colony to achieve responsible government. Whatever that meant at that time, responsible government, to be responsible, like when you step outside in public, have a responsibility, do the obligation. I was responsible enough to pay my rent, pay my electricity bill, and to open carry my disinfectant, hand sanitizer, and increase in hygiene in public. Please increase in hygiene in public. Please increase in hygiene in public. Responsible government. And it's federated in July 1867 with New Brunswick and the province of Canada, now Ontario and Quebec, to form what is now the country of Canada. So, and it federated in July 1867 at the Confederation. This was Confederation July 1st. Confederation 1867 for Canada. That was July 1st. Confederation in July 1867 for Canada. With New Brunswick and the province of Quebec. And the province of Quebec, New Brunswick, the province of Quebec, to achieve responsible government. And it federated in July 1867. And with New Brunswick and the province of Canada, now Ontario and Quebec, to form what is now the country of Canada. Nova Scotia's capital and largest municipality is Halifax. Nova Scotia's capital and largest municipality is Halifax, which I had the honor to, of course, visit. Nova Scotia's capital and largest municipality is Halifax. Nova Scotia's capital and largest municipality is Halifax, which of course I've visited. I loved it with my sister. I loved it. I visited with my sister and I loved it, which is home to over 45% of the province population as of the 2021 census. Halifax is the 13th largest census metropolitan area in Canada. Halifax is the 10th largest. It was a big city. I really loved it when I went there. It was a big city and I loved it. We started exploring from right at the top of the Citadel, what's called the Citadel in Halifax, and I would have loved to be there with the Dragan army, some dragons there doing some work, doing some volunteer work, even some volunteer work. And to do XYZ is the 13th largest census metropolitan area in Canada. The largest municipality in Atlantic Canada and Canada's second largest coastal municipality after Vancouver. The largest municipality in Atlantic Canada, Canada's second largest coastal municipality after Vancouver. After Vancouver. So, Parliament of Canada. Canada, July 1st, 1867, that was Confederation, and the capital and largest metropolitan area is Halifax. Etymology. Nova Scotia means New Scotland in Latin. Nova Scotia means New Scotland in Latin. Nova Scotia means New Scotland in Latin and is the recognized English language name for the province. In both French and Scottish Gaelic, the province is directly translated as New Scotland. French, Nouvelle Écosse. Gaelic, Alba Nuad. Alba Nuad. Alba Nuad. In general, Romance and Slavic languages use a direct translation of New Scotland, while most other languages use direct transliteration of the Latin English name. The province was first named in the 1621 Royal Charter, granting to Sir William Alexander in 1632 the right to settle lands including modern Nova Scotia, Cape Breton Island, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and the Gaspé Peninsula. The tree is the red spruce. The flower is the mayflower. The bird is the osprey. The flower is the mayflower. The tree is the red spruce and the bird is the osprey. The flower is the mayflower. The tree is the red spruce and the bird is the osprey. The flower is the mayflower. The tree is the red spruce and the bird is the osprey. New Scotland English name. The province was first named in the 1621 Royal Charter, granting to Sir William Alexander in 1632 the right to settle lands including modern Nova Scotia, Cape Breton Island, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and the Gaspé Peninsula. Geography. Nova Scotia is Canada's second smallest province in area after Prince Edward Island. The province mainland is the Nova Scotia Peninsula, surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, including numerous bays and estuaries. Nowhere in Nova Scotia is more than 67 kilometers, 42 miles from the ocean. Cape Breton Island, a large island to the northeast of the Nova Scotia mainland, is also part of the province and is Sable Island, a small island notorious for being the site of offshore shipwrecks, approximately 175 kilometers, 110 square miles from the province's southern coast. Nova Scotia has many ancient fossil-bearing rock formations. These formations are particularly rich on the Bay of Fundy shore. The Blue Beach near Hansport Jogging's fossil cliffs on the Bay of Fundy shores has yielded an abundance of Carboniferous age fossils. Watson's Bluff near the town of Parsboro has yielded both Triassic and Jurassic age fossils. Interesting. The highest point is White Hill at 533 meters, 1,749 feet above sea level, situated amongst the Cape Breton Highlands and the far north of the province. The province contains 5,400 lakes. The province contains 5,400 lakes. We learned something today. We learned something today. We learned something today. The province contains 5,400 lakes. 5,400 lakes. Nova Scotia is located along the 45th parallel north, so it's midway between the equator and the North Pole. The true halfway point that also goes through Nova Scotia is 45 degrees 08 and 36.5 north. Climate. Nova Scotia lies in the mid-temperate zone, and although the province is almost surrounded by water, the climate is closer to continental climate rather than maritime. The winter and summer temperature extremes of the continental climate are moderated by the ocean. However, winters are cold enough to be classified as continental, still being nearer the freezing point than inland areas to the west. The Nova Scotian climate is in many ways similar to the central Baltic Sea coast in northern Europe, only wetter and snowier. This is true although Nova Scotia is some 15 parallels further south. Areas not on the Atlantic coast experience warmer summers, more typical of inland areas, and winter lows are a little colder. On 12th of August 2020, the community of Grand Etang, famous for its less wet winds, recorded a balmy overnight low of 23.3 degrees Celsius, described on the provincial vehicle license plate as Canada's Ocean Playground. Described on the provincial vehicle license plate as Canada's Ocean Playground. Described on the provincial vehicle license plate. Is that so? Wow, that's cool. Oh yeah, Canada's Ocean Playground. Nova Scotia is surrounded by four major bodies of water: the Gulf of St. Lawrence to the north, the Bay of Fundy to the west, the Gulf of Maine to the southwest, and the Atlantic Ocean to the east. Average daily maximum and minimum temperatures for selected locations. History. The province includes regions of the Mi'kmaq Nation and Mi'kmaq, the territory of which extends across the Maritimes, parts of Maine in the U.S., down there, Newfoundland, and the Gaspé Peninsula. The Mi'kmaq people are part of the large Algonquin language family and inhabited Nova Scotia at the time the first European colonists arrived. European settlement. The first Europeans to settle in what is now Nova Scotia were the French, who arrived in 1604. The French arrived in 1604. The French arrived in 1604. And Catholic Mi'kmaq and Acadians formed the majority of the population of the colony for the next 150 years. In 1605, French colonists established the first permanent European settlement in the future Canada and the first north of Florida of Port Royal, founding what would become known as Acadia. Warfare was a notable feature in Nova Scotia during the 17th and 18th century. During the first 80 years, the French and Acadians lived in Nova Scotia. 9 significant military clashes took place as the English and Scottish, later British, Dutch, and French fought for possession of the area. These encounters happened at Port Royal in St. John, Cap de Sable, present-day Port Tour, Nova Scotia, Jamesburg, and Baleine, and the Acadian Civil War took place from 1640 to 1645. Beginning with King William's War, 1688, a series of 6 wars took place between the English and British and the French, with Nova Scotia being a consistent theater of conflict between the two powers. Then we have history. Post-Confederation history. Soon after the American Civil War, pro-Canadian Confederation premiers Charles Tupper led Nova Scotia into Canadian Confederation on 1st of July 1867, along with the New Brunswick and the province of Canada. Charles Tupper, T-U-P-P-E-R, a surname. The Anti-Confederation Party was led by Joseph Howe, H-O-W-E, and H-O-W-E, Howe. Almost 3 months later, in the election of September 1865, the Anti-Confederation Party won 18 out of 19 federal seats and 36 out of 38 seats in the provincial legislature. Ethnicity. According to the 2016 Canadian Consensus, the largest ethnic group in Nova Scotia is Scottish, 30%, followed by English, 28.9%, Irish, 21.6%, French, 16.5%, German, 10.7%, First Nation, 5.4%, Dutch, 3.5%, Métis, and Acadian. According to the 2016 Canadian Consensus, the largest ethnic group in Nova Scotia is Scottish, 30%, followed by English, 28.9%, Irish, 21.6%, French, 16.5%, German, 10.7%, and First Nations, 5.4%, Dutch, 3.5%, Métis, 2.9%, and Acadian. 42.6% of respondents identified their ethnicity as Canadians. Interesting. 42.6% of respondents identified their ethnicity as Canadians. 42.6% of respondents, 2016, identified their ethnicity as Canadian. I'm going to say North American. I'm going to say North American. This is my theory. Collective North American civilization. Languages. As of 2021 Canadian Consensus, the 10 most spoken languages in the province included English, 951,000 or 99%, but also French, 9,300, so 10.39% also speak French. Arabic, 11,745, that's 1.23%. Hindi, 10,111, that's 1.6%. And Spanish, 8,675. Nova Scotia is home to the largest Scottish Gaelic-speaking community outside of Scotland. Interesting. Nova Scotia is home to the largest Scottish Gaelic-speaking community outside of Scotland. Nova Scotia is home to the largest Scottish Gaelic-speaking community outside of Scotland. With a small number of native speakers in Pidgin, Nova Scotia is home to the largest Scottish Gaelic-speaking community outside of Scotland. Wow. Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia's per capita GDP in 2016 was 44,924 per capita. So the average. Significantly lower than the national average per capita GDP of 57,574. Significantly lower. GDP growth has lagged behind the rest of the country for at least the past decade. As of 2017, the median family income in Nova Scotia was 85,970, below the national average of 92,290. In Halifax, the figure rises to 98,870. The province is the world's largest exporter of Christmas trees, lobster, gypsum, and wild berries. The province is the world's largest exporter of Christmas trees, lobster, gypsum, and wild berries. The province is the world's largest exporter of Christmas trees, lobster, gypsum, and wild berries. The province is the world's largest exporter of Christmas trees, lobster, gypsum, and wild berries. Interesting. I didn't know about wild berries. Christmas trees, I thought we had a lot here. Lobster, I thought maybe not. Lobster, interesting. Worlds though. So interestingly enough, this is the world. So not just Canada, North America, the world's largest exporter of Christmas trees, lobster, gypsum, and wild berries. Wow, is that so? Wild berries. Interesting. Its export value of fish exceeds 1 billion, and fish products are received by 90 countries around the world. Its export value of fish exceeds 1 billion, and fish products are received by 90 countries around the world. Its export value of fish exceeds 1 billion, and fish products are received by 90 countries. 90. Wow. I'm learning. Nevertheless, the province imports far exceed its exports. While these numbers, so import versus export, while these numbers were roughly equal from 1992 to 2004, for 12 years. Since that time, the trade deficit has ballooned in 2012. Exports from Nova Scotia were 12.1 of provincial GDP, while imports were 22.6. So the world's top exporter of Christmas trees, lobster, gypsum, and wild berry. Nova Scotia tourism industry includes more than 6,500 direct businesses supporting nearly 40 jobs. Cruise ships pay regular visits to the province. In 2010, the port of Halifax, where I went, the port of Halifax, I love you, kiss you, port of Halifax, received 261 passengers and Sydney 69,000. This industry contributes approximately 1.3 billion annually to the economy. This industry contributes approximately 1.3 billion annually to the economy. This industry contributes approximately 1.3 billion annually to the economy. A 28 Nova Scotia tourism campaign included advertising a fictional mobile phone called Pomegranate and establishing website. New phone, interesting. I loved it when I've been there. I've been there a few years ago. I loved it. Government and politics. Nova Scotia is ordered by a parliamentary government drop down. Parliamentarians, politicians in Nova Scotia give Dragan 13 push-ups. The monarchy in Nova Scotia. The sovereign is King Charles III. Also, they updated the King Charles III now. The sovereign is King Charles III. My king is the son, my king is the son, my king is the son. So I'm going to say Charles III. And while also served as the head of state of 14 other Commonwealth countries, each of Canada's 9 other provinces in the Canadian federal realm, and resides predominantly in the United Kingdom. As such, the King's representative Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, at President Arthur Joseph LeBlanc, carries out most of the royal duties in Nova Scotia. The direct participation of the royal and viceroyal figures in these areas of governments is limited, though in practice. So it's more symbolic, in other words. Administrative divisions, and we're going to wrap it up there, and the cuisine, and we wrap up Nova Scotia. Administrative divisions. Administrative divisions. Municipal level governance is provided by 50 municipalities, of which there are 3 types: regional municipalities, towns, and county or district municipalities. Villages can exist within county or district municipalities with a limited authority and an elected council. Nova Scotia is divided into 18 counties. 9 of the original 18 counties retain a country-level government, while the rest are inter-participated. So 18 historical counties, into counties. So municipal level governance is provided by 50 municipalities, of which are 3 types: regional municipalities, towns, and county or district municipalities. Villages can exist within county or district municipalities. Nova Scotia is divided into 18 counties. 9 of the original 18 counties retain a county-level government, while the rest are either governed by regional or district municipalities. Interesting. Culture. Cuisine. The cuisine of Nova Scotia is typically Canadian. I had some good seafood there. One of the best seafood I got. One of the best seafood I got. Go Nova Scotians, go, 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 go. The cuisine of Nova Scotia is typically Canadian, with an emphasis on local seafood. One endemic dish, in the sense of peculiar to and originating from, is the Halifax doner. Yeah, I think that's what I have, the doner. A distant variant of the doner kebab, prepared using thinly sliced beef, meatloaf, and a sweet condensed milk sauce. As well, hodgepodge. A creamy soup of fresh baby vegetables. Yeah, I think I had that one too, a hodgepodge, because I said, I asked when I was there at the restaurant with my sister. I said, what is Nova Scotia? What is really something typical of Nova Scotia? And they said the hodgepodge. I think it came with lobster though. Lobster, I think it came with lobster. Yeah. A creamy soup of fresh baby vegetables. The province is also known for a dessert called blueberry grunt. I think I had that one also. So I think I had these three. I think I had the three. So from Nova Scotia, we now go to Prince Edward Island. Go Nova Scotia, go Nova Scotia, go Nova Scotia, go Prince Edward Island, go Prince Edward Island. Prince Edward Island, PEI. Prince Edward Island, PEI, Prince Edward Island, PEI, Prince Edward Island, PEI, is one of the 13 provinces and territories of Canada. It is the smallest province in terms of land area and population, but the most densely populated. The island has several nicknames: Garden of the Gulf, Birthplace of Confederation, and Cradle of Confederation. Several nicknames: Prince Edward Island, but the island has several nicknames: Garden of the Gulf, Birthplace of Confederation, and Cradle of Confederation. Its capital and largest city is Charlottetown. Charlottetown. Charlotteetown. Charlottetown. I'm just pronouncing it. It is one of the three maritime provinces and one of the four of the Atlantic provinces. Of the Atlantic provinces is the maritime. Sometimes we say maritime to include. It's only the three in the maritime because they're close to the ocean, while the Atlantic provinces are four, including Newfoundland and Labrador. Part of the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq. It was colonized by the French in 1604 as part of the colony of Acadia. So same as Nova Scotia, Acadia, same as Nova Scotia, Acadia. The island was ceded to the British at the conclusion of the French and Indian War in 1763, interesting history, and became part of the colony of Nova Scotia. And in 1769, the island became its own British colony. Prince Edward Island hosted the Charlton Conference in 1864 to discuss a union of the maritime provinces. However, the conference became the first in a series of meetings which led to the Canadian Confederation in 1867. Prince Edward Island initially balked, B-A-L-K-E-D, balked at Confederation. Balked, B-A, not barked as a dog, but balked, B-A-L-K-E-D, at Confederation, but facing bankruptcy from the land question and construction of a railroad, joined as Canada's seventh province in 1873. According to Statistics Canada, the province of British Prince Edward Island had 158,717 residents in 2019. The backbone of the island economy is farming. It produces 25% of Canada's potatoes. Wow, interesting. I didn't know that much. One quarter, 25%. That's a quarter, right? One out of every four. Statistics, interesting statistics. Learning a little bit, some more info, some more statistics, some more facts about each province. It produces 25% of Canada's potatoes. Canada's potatoes. Other important industries include the fisheries, tourism, aerospace, bioscience, IT, and renewable energy. As Prince Edward Island is one of Canada's older settlements, its population still reflects some of the earliest settlers, with Canadian, Scottish, Irish, and English surnames being dominated. Surnames, family names. Prince Edward Island is located in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, about 200 kilometers, 120 miles north of Halifax, and 600 kilometers, 370 miles east of Quebec City, and has a land area of 5,686.03 kilometers square. That is 2,195.39 square miles. The main island is 5,620 kilometers, or 2,170 square miles in size. It is the 104th largest island in the world and Canada's 23rd largest island, and the only Canadian province consisting solely of an island. Interesting. And the only Canadian province consisting solely of an island. And the only Canadian province, because it's an island surrounded by the ocean and part of the river St. Lawrence Gulf, the Gulf, right? So it's solely the Canadian province, which is solely an island, is Prince Edward Island. Population. The total population estimate of this now 2022 is 167,680. 167,680. So it's not very populated. 10th ranked. 167,680. 680. Etymology. The island is known in the Mi'kmaq language for its historic indigenous occupants as Abingyo or Pikwik, roughly translated as land cradled in the waves. That's nice. I like that. When the island was part of Acadia, originally settled by French colonists, its French name was Ile Saint-Jean, St. John's Island. In French, the island is today called Ile du Prince-Édouard. As a result of early French colonial name, Scots immigrants knew the island in Scottish Gaelic as Éilean Frinoisa, the island of the prince. Éilean Frinoisa Gaelic, Éilean Frinoisa. The island was split from the British colony of Nova Scotia in 1769. The island was split from the British colony of Nova Scotia. Interesting, so it's part of Nova Scotia in 1769. And renamed in 1798 after Prince Edward, Duke of Kent and Stratham, the fourth son of King George III, and in 1817 father of the future was Queen Victoria. Interesting. Geography. Prince Edward Island is located in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, west of Cape Breton Island, north of Nova Scotia Peninsula. Right? And east of New Brunswick. Its southern shore bounds the Northumber Strait. The island has 2 urban areas, and in total it is the most densely located province in Canada. The larger urban area surrounds Charlton Harbour, situated centrally on the island's southern shore. It consists of the capital city Charlton, Charlton, Charlotton, and suburban towns Cornwall and Stratford, and a developing urban fringe, a much smaller urban area developed around Summerside Harbour, situated on the southern shore 40 kilometers, 25 miles west of Charlottetown Harbour. This consists primarily of the city of Summerside. As with all natural harbors on the island, Charlton and Summerside harbors are created by NAS. The coastline has a combination of long beaches, dunes, red sandstone cliffs, saltwater marshes, and numerous bays and harbors. The beaches, dunes, and sandstone cliffs consist of sedimentary rock and other material with a high iron concentration, which oxidizes upon exposure to the air. The geological properties of a white silica sand found at Basin Head are unique in the province. The sand grains cause a scrubbing noise as they rub against each other when walked on, and have been called the singing sands. Large dune fields on the north shore can be found on barrier islands at the entrances to various bays and harbors. The sand dunes at Greenwich, 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 are of particular significance. The shifting parabolic dune system is home to a variety of birds and rare plants. Is also a site of significant archaeological interest. Wow. And they have some pictures there. Climate. The climate of the island is a maritime climate considered to be moderate and strongly influenced by the surrounding areas. The climate of the island is a maritime climate considered to be moderate and strongly influenced by the surrounding areas. The climate of the island is a maritime climate considered to be moderate and strongly influenced by the surrounding areas. As such, it is milder than inland locations owing to the farm waters from the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The climate is characterized by changeable weather throughout the year. It has some of the most variable day-to-day weather in Canada, in which specific weather conditions seldom last for long. Interesting. Water supply. Water supply. The province of Prince Edward Island is completely dependent on groundwater for its source of drinking water, with approximately 305 high-capacity wells in use as of December 2018. As groundwater, something might. Prince Edward, the province of Prince Edward Island is completely dependent on groundwater for its source of drinking water, with approximately 305 high-capacity wells in use as of December 2018. As groundwater flows through an aquifer, it is naturally filtered. The water for the city of Charlottetown is extracted from 13 wells in 3 well fields and distributed to customers. Interesting. The water in the city of Charlottetown is extracted from 13 wells in 3 fields, 13 and 3, 13 and 3, 13 and 3. Water in Charlottetown is extracted from 13 wells and in 3 well fields and distributed to customers. The water removed, it's replenished by precipitation. Infrastructure in Charlottetown that was installed in 1888 is still in existence. With the age of the system in the older part of Charlottetown, concern has been raised regarding lead pipes. The utility has been working with its residents on a lead replacement program. Go, lead replacement program, go. A plebiscite in 1967 was held in Charlottetown over fluoridation, and residents voted in favor. Under provincial legislation, the utility is required to report to its residents on an annual basis. It is also required to do regular sampling of the water, and an overview it includes in each annual report. The Winter River watershed provides about 92% of the 18 million liter, 4.8 million gallon US gallon water supply for the city of Charlottetown, which had difficulty in each 2011, 2012, and 2013 with its supply until water meters were installed. Government tabled a discussion paper on the proposed Water Act for the province on July 8, 2015. The use of groundwater came under scrutiny as the potato industry, love you, kiss you, hug you potatoes, who of course we know that is 25%, which is 1 out of 4 potatoes are grown. Big industry, which accounts for 1 billion every year and 50% of farm receipts. Wow. Has pressed the government to lift the moratorium on high-capacity water wells for irrigation. Interesting. We're learning. The release of the discussion paper was to set off a consultation process in autumn 2015. Detailed information about the quality of drinking water in PEI communities and watersheds can be found on the provincial government's official website. It provides a summary of the ongoing testing of drinking water done by the Prince Edward Island Analytical Laboratories. Average drinking water quality results are available and information on the following parameters are provided. Alkalinity, cadmium, calcium, chlorine, thorium, iron, magnesium, manganese, nickel, nitrate, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and sulfate, as well as the presence of pesticides. Water testing services are provided for a variety of clients through the PEI Analytical Laboratories, which assesses according to the recommendations of the guidelines for Canadian drinking water quality published by Health Canada. Flora and fauna. Flora and fauna. Prince Edward Island used to have native moose, bear, caribou, wolf, and other larger species. Due to hunting and habitat disruption, these species are no longer found on the island. Some species common to Prince Edward Island are red foxes. Interesting, red foxes, eh? Red foxes. Coyotes, blue jays, and robins. Pretty cool. I love them all. Red fox. Red is my favorite color, so give me some red foxes. Coyote, blue jays, and robins. Skunks. And raccoons are common non-native species. Species at risk in Prince Edward Island include piping plovers, American eel, bobolinks, B-O links. I love that name. Bobolinks. Bobolinks. Bobolinks, little brown bat, and beach pinwheel. Some species are unique to the province. In 2008, new alga species, Ascomycete species, Ascomycete. First time I read that word. Ascomycete. Ascomycete species. Ascomycete. First time I read that word, I think. Maybe I have before, but general species were collected from submerged wood in freshwater creek in Prince Edward Island. History. Before the influx of Europeans, the Mi'kmaq First Nations have inhabited Prince Edward Island as part of the original Mi'kmaqi. They named the island Epiquik, meaning cradle in the waves. I love that. The French colony. In 1534, Jacques Cartier was the first European to see the island. In 1534, Jacques Cartier was the first European to see the island. In 1534, Jacques Cartier was the first European to see the island. In 1604, the Kingdom of France laid claim to the lands of the Maritimes under the Discovery Doctrine, including Prince Edward Island, establishing the French colony of Acadia. The island was named Ile Saint-Jean, St. John's Island, by the French. The Mi'kmaq never recognized the claim but welcomed the French as trading partners and allies. During the 18th century, the French were engaged in a series of conflicts with the Kingdom of Great Britain and its colonies. Several battles between the two belligerents occurred on Prince Edward Island during this period following the British capture of Louisbourg during the War of the Austrian Succession. New Englanders launched an attack on Ile Saint-Jean, now Prince Edward Island, with a British detachment landed at Port La Joie. The island's capital had a garrison of 20 French soldiers under the command of Joseph Dupont d'Uvier. The troops fled the settlement, and the New Englanders burned the settlement to the ground. Hostilities between British and French colonial forces resumed in 1754. British colony, initially named St. John's Island by the British, the island was administered as part of the colony of Nova Scotia until it was split into a separate colony in 1769. Interesting. Confederation. In September 1864, Prince Edward Island hosted Confederation. In September 1864, Prince Edward Island hosted the Charlestown Conference, which was the first meeting in the process leading to the Quebec Resolutions and the creation of Canada in 1867. Prince Edward Island did not find the terms of union favorable and balked at joining in 1867, choosing to remain a colony of the United Kingdom. In the late 1860s, the colony examined various options, including the possibility of becoming a discrete dominion unto itself, as well as entertaining delegations from the United States who were interested in Prince Edward Island joining the United States. Interesting. In 1871, the colony began construction of the Prince Edward Island Railway, P. Railway. Frustrated by Great Britain's colonial office, began negotiations with the United States. In 1873, Canadian Prime Minister John A. Macdonald, anxious to thwart American expansionism and facing the distraction of the Pacific Scandal, negotiated for Prince Edward Island to join Canada. The Dominion government of Canada assumed the colony's extensive railway debts and agreed to finance a buyout of the last of the colony's absentee landlords. Absentee landlords, to free the island of Lee so tenure and from any new immigrants entering the island, accomplished through the passage of the Land Purchase Act, 1875. Prince Edward Island entered Confederation on July 1st, 1873. As a result of having hosted the inaugural meeting of Confederation, the Charlton Conference, Prince Edward Island presents itself as the birthplace of Confederation, and this is commemorated through several buildings, a ferry vessel, and the Confederation Bridge, constructed in 1993 and 1997. The most prominent building in the province honoring this event is the Confederation Center of the Arts. Interesting. Presented as a gift to Prince Edward Islanders by the 10 provincial governments and the federal government upon the centenary of the Charlton Conference. Prince Edward Island entered Confederation on July 1st, 1873. So, 6 years after. Federal government on Senate Charlton Conference, where it stands in Charlton as a national monument to the Fathers of Confederation. The center is one of the 22 National Historic Sites of Canada, located in Prince Edward Island. Demographics. Ethnicity. According to the 2016 Canadian Census, of the 139,690 people who self-identified with an ethnic origin, 98,615 were of European origins, and 85,000 chose British Isles origin. Almost half of respondents identified their ethnicity as Canadians. Interesting. Almost half of respondents identified their ethnicity as Canadian. Almost half of respondents identified their ethnicity as Canadians. Language. As of 2021 Canadian Consensus, 10 most spoken languages of the province included English, 149,525, or 99%, and 36, and French, 19,445, or 12.92%. Also Mandarin, 2,940, or 1.95%, or Hindi, 1,660, or 1.1%. Tagalog, 1,630, or 1%, or Punjabi, 1,550. Interesting. Economy. The economy. Let's read about the economy now. Economy. The provincial economy is dominated by the seasonal industries of agriculture, tourism, and fishery. The island also has tourists who visit year-round, with tourists enjoying a variety of leisure activities, including the beaches, various golf courses, ecotourism adventures, touring the countryside, and varied cultural events in local communities around the island. The economy of most rural communities on the island is based on small-scale agriculture. Industrial farming has increased as businesses buy and consolidate older farm properties. The province is limited in terms of heavy industry and manufacturing, though Cavendish Farms runs extensive food manufacturing operations on Prince Edward Island. Agriculture remains the dominant industry in the provincial economy, as it has since colonial times. In 2015, agriculture and agri-food manufacturing was responsible for 7.6% of the province's GDP. The island has a total land area of 1.4 million acres, 5,700 hectares, with approximately 5,904 acres cleared for agricultural use. In 2016, the Census of Agriculture counted 1,353 farms on the island. Wow. Love you, kiss you, hug you, farmers. Love you, kiss you, hug you, farmers. Love you, kiss you, hug you, farmers. In 2016, the Census of Agriculture counted 1,353 farms on the island, which is a 9.5 decrease. So it has been decreased from the previous census of 2011. That's a lot of percentage. In 2016, the Consensus of Agriculture counted 1,353 farms on the island. During the 20th century, potato replaced mixed farming as the leading cash crop, accounting for 1/3, that's 33% of provincial farm income. The number of acres under potato production in 2010 was 88,000, while soy accounted for 55,000. The number of acres under potato production in 2010 was 83,000, while soy accounted for 55,000. The number of acres under potato production in 2010 was 88,000, while soy accounted for 55,000. There are approximately 330 potato growers on PEI. There are approximately, love you, kiss you, hug you, potato growers. There are approximately 330 potato growers on Prince Edward Island, with a grand majority of these being family farms, often with multiple generations working together. Wow, love you, kiss you, hug you. The province currently accounts for a third of Canada's total potato production, producing approximately 1.3 billion kilograms. Wow. Province currently accounts for a third of Canada's total potato production, producing approximately 1.3 billion kilograms. The province currently accounts, wow, for a third of Canada's total potato production, producing approximately 1.3 billion kilograms. 1.3 billion kilograms, wow. 1,400,000 short tons annually. Comparatively, the state of Idaho produces approximately 6.2 billion kilograms, 6,800 short tons annually, with a population approximately 9.5 times greater, though. The population is 9.5 times greater, Idaho. The province is a major producer of seed potatoes, exporting to more than 20 countries around the world. Interesting. Learning something, learning something, learning something. The province is a major producer of seed potatoes, exporting to more than 20 countries around the world. The province is a major producer of seed potatoes, exporting to more than 20 countries around the world. The province is a major producer of seed potatoes, exporting to more than 20 countries around the world. An estimated total of 70% of the land is cultivated, and 25% of all potatoes grown in Canada, a quarter, 25%. 25% is 1 out of 4, 25% of all potatoes grown in Canada originate from Prince Edward Island. Wow. Continue. Processing of frozen fried potatoes, green vegetables, and berries is a leading business activity. The processing of frozen fried potatoes, green vegetables, and berries is a leading business activity. The processing of frozen fried potatoes, green vegetables, and berries is a leading business activity. The processing of frozen fried potatoes, green vegetables, and berries is a leading business activity. As a legacy of the island's colonial history, the provincial government enforces extremely strict rules for non-resident land ownership, especially since the PEI Lands Protection Act of 1982. Residents and corporations are limited to maximum holdings of 400 and 1,200 hectares respectively. There are also restrictions on non-resident ownership of shorelines. Many of the province's coastal communities rely upon shellfish harvesting, particularly lobster fishing, as well as oyster fishing and mussel farming. Many of the province's coastal communities rely upon shellfish harvesting, particularly lobster fishing, as well as oyster fishing and mussel farming. Many of the province's coastal communities rely upon shellfish harvesting, particularly lobster fishing, as well as oyster fishing and mussel farming. Many of the province's coastal communities rely upon shellfish harvesting, particularly lobster fishing, as well as oyster fishing and mussel farming. The island's economy has grown significantly over the past decade in key areas of innovation: aerospace, bioscience, information and communications technology, and renewable energy have been a focus for growth and diversification. Aerospace alone now accounts for over 25% of the province's international exports. Wow. Aerospace alone now accounts for over 25% of the province's international exports and is the island's fourth largest industry at 355 million in annual sales. Aerospace alone now accounts for over 25% of the province's international exports and is the island's fourth largest industry at 355 million in annual sales. Aerospace alone now accounts for over 25% of the province's international exports and is the island's fourth largest industry at 355 million in annual sales. The bioscience industry employs over 1,300 people and generates over 150 million in sales. The sale of carbonated beverages such as beer and soft drinks in non-refillable containers such as aluminum cans or plastic bottles. Energy. Since 1918, Maritime Electric has delivered electricity to customers on the island. The utility is currently owned and operated by Fortis Inc. Utility company is owned by Fortis Inc. The utility is currently owned and operated by Fortis Inc. Approximately 25% of electricity consumed at the island is generated from renewable energy, largely wind turbines. I wonder how those wind turbines are, with a storm. Wind turbines. The provincial government had set a renewable energy target for 30 to 50% for electricity consumed by 2015, though this goal has not yet been met. The total capacity of wind power on the island is 204 megawatts from 89 turbines. There are 8 wind farms on the island. The largest being West Cape Wind Park with a capacity of 99 megawatts from 55 turbines. 55 turbines. All of the turbines have been manufactured by Vestas. The Vestas V80, Vestas V90, Vestas V47. A thermal oil-fired generation station. The Charlton Thermal Generating Station. Thermal oil-fired generating station. Is used sometimes for emergencies. Maybe now it's being used for emergencies. It is being decommissioned. A second thermal generation station exists in Borden, the Borden Generating Station. The majority of electricity consumed on Prince Edward Island come from the New Brunswick through undersea cables. Interesting. See, we're learning something. The majority of electricity consumed on Prince Edward Island comes from New Brunswick through undersea cables. A recent 140 million upgrade brought the capacity of the cable system from 200 megawatts to 560, so almost tripled. Almost 3 times, almost tripled. The majority of electricity consumed on Prince Edward Island comes from New Brunswick through undersea cables. A recent 140 million upgrade brought the capacity of the cable system from 200 million megawatts to 560. Bravo. Bravo. The Point Lepreau nuclear plant in New Brunswick was closed for refurbishments from 2008 to 2012, resulting in a steep price hike of about 25%, but the province later subsidized rates. Residents were to pay 11.2% more for electricity when the harmonized sales tax was adopted in April 2013. Education. Prince Edward Island's public school system has an English school district named the Public Schools Branch, previously the English Language School Board, as well as a Francophone district, the Commission Scolaire de Langue Française. Government, the provincial, and politics. The provincial government is responsible for such areas as health and social services, education, economic development, labor legislation, and civil law. These matters of government are overseen in the provincial capital, Charlton. Prince Edward Island is governed by a parliamentary government within the construct of constitutional monarchy. The sovereign king is Charles III, who also served as head of state 14 other Commonwealth countries. Each of Canada's 9 other provinces. Canadian federal realm. Administrative divisions. Prince Edward Island is divided into 3 counties that have historically been used as administrative divisions for the provincial government, and prior to Confederation in 1873, the colonial government. The counties are no longer used as administrative boundaries for the provincial government. However, they continue to be used as consensus division by Statistics Canada for statistical purposes in administering the Canadian consensus. Zoning. The island's landscape is pastoral. Healthcare and sanitation. There are 8 hospitals in the province. Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Charlton, Prince County Hospital, Summerside, Kings County Memorial Hospital, Montague, Community Hospital, O'Leary, Sussex Hospital, Zurich, Western Hospital, Alberton, Hillsborough Hospital, Charlton, the province-only psychiatric hospital. Prince Edward Island offers programs and services in areas such as acute care, primary care, home care, palliative care. Transportation. Prince Edward Island's transportation network has traditionally revolved around its seaports of Charlton, Summerside, Borden, Georgetown, Zurich, linked to its railway system, and the two main airports in Charlottetown and Somersville, two main airports, for communication with mainland North America. So I was relied on the railway system and the two main airports for communication with mainland North America, linked to its railway system and the two main airports in Charlottetown and Summerside for communication with mainland North America. The railway system was abandoned by CN in 1989 in favor of an agreement with the federal government to improve major highways. Interesting. The railway system was abandoned by Canadian National in 1989 in favor of an agreement with the federal government to improve major highways. The railway system was abandoned by CN in 1989 in favor of an agreement with the federal government to improve major highways. The railway system was abandoned by CN in 1989 in favor of an agreement with the federal government to improve major highways. Arts. The island's cultural traditions of art, music, and creative writing are supported through a public education system. Festivals. There's an annual arts festival, Charlton Festival, Confederation Center for the Arts. Sports. The most common sports played on the island are hockey, curling, golf, horse racing, baseball, soccer, rugby, football, American football, North American football, North American football, North American football, drill, defense, offense, defense, offense, defense, offense. That was Prince Edward Island. 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 And now we'll wrap it up with New Brunswick. New Brunswick. Love you, kiss you, hug you, New Brunswick. Love you, kiss you, hug you, New Brunswick. Love you, kiss you, hug you, New Brunswick. So we done Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. We're gonna go in order from the Maritime. New Brunswick, Nouveau Brunswick. New Brunswick is one of the 13 provinces and territories of Canada. It is one of the 3 maritime provinces. It is one of the 3 maritime provinces and one of the 4 Atlantic provinces. So what's known as the Maritime and Atlantic provinces, with Atlantic, of course, because they are including the Newfoundland and Labrador. The Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland. It is one of the 3 maritime provinces and one of the 4 Atlantic provinces. The only province with both English and French as official languages. New Brunswick is bordered by Quebec to the north, Nova Scotia to the east, the Gulf of St. Lawrence to the northeast, the Bay of Fundy to the southeast, and the U.S. state of Maine to the west. New Brunswick is about 83% forested. Wow, that's a lot of forest. 83%. I didn't know that. I'm learning something. 83% about, more or less, estimations. Well, that's a lot of forest. It's about 83%. That's more than 3/4, which is 75%. More than is about. So more or less a few percentages is about, but still that's a lot. 83% forested, and its northern half is occupied by the Appalachians. The province's climate is continental with snowy winters and temperate summers. New Brunswick has a surface area of 72,908 kilometers square. That is 28,150 square miles, and in kilometers is 72,908 square kilometers, while miles it's 28,150 square miles. So it's 72,908 square kilometers, and miles is 28,150 square miles, and 775,610 inhabitants of the 2021 census. So 3/4 of a million, 775,610 in 2021. Atypically for Canada, only about half of the population lives in urban areas. So it's not a typical thing because most of the population lives in urban areas. Atypically for Canada, only about half of the population lives in urban areas. Atypically, so not typically, not generally, not following the rest of Canada, only about half of the population lives in urban areas. New Brunswick's largest cities are Moncton and St. John, while its capital is Fredericton. In 1969, New Brunswick passed the Official Languages Act, which began recognizing French as an official language along with English. New Brunswickers have the right to receive provincial government services in the official language of their choice. About 2/3 of the population are Anglophone and 1/3 are Francophone. Along about 2/3, that's about 66.6% of the population are Anglophone and 1/3 are Francophone. So about two-thirds, that's about 66.6% of the population are Anglophone, and 1/3, which is about 33.3%, are Francophone. New Brunswick is home to the most of the cultural region of Acadia and most Acadians. New Brunswick variety of French is called Acadian French, and 7 regional accents can be found. New Brunswick was first inhabited by First Nations like the Mi'kmaq and Mouset. In 1604, Acadia, the first New France colony, was founded with the creation of Port Royal. For 156 years afterwards, Acadia changed hands a few times due to numerous conflicts between France and the United Kingdom. From 1755 to 1764, the British deported Acadians en masse, an event known as Great Upheaval. This, along with the Treaty of Paris, solidified Acadia as British property. In 1784, following the arrival of many loyalists fleeing the American Revolution, they were fleeing the American Revolution, 1784, the colony of New Brunswick was officially created. Interesting. 1784. The province of New Brunswick was officially created, separating it from what is now Nova Scotia. In the early, so it's separated from Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick. What I'm reading now about New Brunswick was all, Nova Scotia included, was all called Nova Scotia. So it's separated a few hundred years ago. Became Prince Edward Island, and this one became New Brunswick. But before it was all known as Nouvelle Écosse, New Nova Scotia, Latin for New Scotland, right? Officially created. In the early 1800s, New Brunswick prospered and the population grew rapidly. In 1867, New Brunswick decided to confederate with Nova Scotia and the province of Canada, now Quebec and Ontario, to form Canada. After Confederation, shipbuilding and lumbering declined and protectionism disrupted trade with New England. From the mid-1900s onwards, New Brunswick was one of the poorest regions in Canada, a fact eventually mitigated by transfer payments. However, the province has seen the highest eastward migration in 45 years in both rural and urban areas. Interesting. As people living in Ontario and other parts of Canada migrate to the area. As of 2002, the provincial GDP was derived as follows. Services, about half being government services and public administration, 43%. Construction, manufacturers, and utilities, 24%. Real estate rental, 12%. Wholesale and retail, 11%. Agriculture, forestry, fishing, hunting, mining, oil, and gas extraction, 5%. Transportation and warehousing, 5%. A powerful corporate concentration of large companies in New Brunswick, including most newspapers, are owned by the Irving Group of companies. The province's 2019 output was Canadian 38.236 billion. 38.206, which is 1.65% of Canada's GDP. Tourism accounts for 9% of the labor force, either directly or indirectly. Popular destinations include the Hopewell Rocks, Fundy National Park, Magnetic Hill, Koochibah National Park, and Roosevelt Campbell International Park. House seats. Population 775,000, as we said. Estimated this year 800,000. Federal representation, House seats 10 of 338, Senate seats 10 of 105. Toponymy. After the founding in 1784, the colony was named New Brunswick in honor of George III, King of Great Britain, King of Ireland, and Prince Elector of Brunswick-Land in what is now Germany. Interesting. After the founding in 1784, the colony was named New Brunswick in honor of George III, King of Great Britain, King of Ireland, and Prince Elector of Brunswick-Lunenburg in what is now Germany. After the founding 1784, the colony was named New Brunswick in honor of George III, King of Britain, King of Ireland, and Prince Elector of Brunswick-Lunenburg in what is now Germany. Interesting. Prior to European arrival, indigenous tribes did not leave a written record, but their language is present in many place names such as Arstak, Bushtak, Memrakok, Petikodiak, Kushpish, Richtbu, and Shediak. Interesting, beautiful names. History. Indigenous peoples have been in the area since about 7000 BC. Wow. At the time of European contact, inhabitants were the Mi'kmaq, Malsian, and Basa Makwodi. Interesting. European settlements. French colonies. The first documented European visits were by Jacques Cartier in 1534. In 1604, a party including Samuel de Champlain visited the mouth of the St. John River on the episode St. Jean Baptiste Day. Now, St. John, this was later the site of the first permanent European settlement in New Brunswick. French settlement eventually extended up the river to the site of present-day Fredericton. Other settlements in the southeast extended from Beaubassin near the present-day border with Nova Scotia to Bay Verte up Petitquatch Hampshire River. British colony. Continental Acadia was eventually incorporated into the British colony of Nova Scotia. This was all Nova Scotia, with nearly all of New France being surrendered to the British with the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Acadians that returned from exile discovered several thousand migrants, mostly from New England, on their former lands. Some settled around Memrock along the St. John River. In 1766, settlers from Pennsylvania found in Moncton, and English settlers from Yorkshire arrived in the Sackville area. However, settlement of the area remained slow in the mid-18th century. After the American Revolution, about 10,000 Loyalist refugees settled along the north shore of the Bay of Fundy, commemorated in the province motto, Sped Redux, Hope Restored. Spem Redux, Hope Restored. Interesting. Spem Redux, Hope Restored. Hope Restored. I like that. Hope Restored. The number reached 14,000 by 1784. New Brunswick was founded in 1784 upon the partition of Nova Scotia into two areas which became the province of Nova Scotia, provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. In the same year, New Brunswick formed its first elected assembly. In 1785, St. John became Canada's first incorporated city. Interesting. Learning something. In 1785, St. John became Canada's first incorporated city. In 1785, St. John became Canada's first incorporated city. The population of the colony reached 26,000 in 1806 and 35,000 in 1812. Confederation brought into existence the Intercolonial Railway in 1872. Confederation brought into existence the Intercolonial Railway in 1872. Confederation brought into existence the Intercolonial Railway in 1872. A consolidation of the existing Nova Scotia Railway, European and North American Railway, and Grand Trunk Railway. Interesting. 1879, John A. Macdonald's Conservatives enacted a national policy which called for high tariffs and opposed free trade, disrupting the trading relationship between the Maritimes and New England. Interesting. The economic situation was worsened by the decline of the wood shipbuilding industry. The railways and tariffs did foster the growth of new industries in the province, such as textile manufacturing, iron mills, and sugar refineries, many of which eventually failed to compete with better capitalized industry in central Canada. An intercolonial railway bridge, 1875. Wow. Cool picture of an intercolonial in 1875. The railway was established as a result of Confederation. In 1937, New Brunswick had the highest infant mortality illiteracy rates in Canada. At the end of the Great Depression, the New Brunswick standard of living was much below the Canadian average. After Canada joined World War II, 14 New Brunswick Army units were organized, in addition to the Royal New Brunswick Regiment, and first deployed to the Italian campaign in 1943. After the Normandy landings, they redeployed to northwestern Europe, along with the North Shore Regiment. The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, a training program for Allied pilots, established bases in Moncton, Chatham, and Penfield Ridge, as well as a military typing school in St. John. The Acadians in northern New Brunswick had long been geographically and linguistically isolated from the more numerous English speakers to the south. Geography. Roughly square, New Brunswick is bordered on the north by Quebec, on the east by the Atlantic Ocean, on the south by the Bay of Fundy, and on the west by the U.S. state of Maine. The southeast corner of the province is connected to Nova Scotia and the Isthmus of Chickadee. Climate. New Brunswick climate is more severe than that of other maritime provinces, which are lower and have more shoreline along the moderating sea. New Brunswick has a humid continental climate, with slightly milder winters on the Gulf of St. Lawrence coastline. So a humid continental climate, humid continental climate. Elevated parts of the far north of the province have a subarctic climate. Flora and fauna. Most of New Brunswick is forested with secondary forest or tertiary forest. At the start of European settlement, the Maritimes were covered from coast to coast by a forest of mature trees, giants by today's standards. Today, less than 1% of old-grown acacia forest remains, and the Worldwide Fund for Nature lists the Acadian forest as endangered. Following the frequent large-scale disturbances caused by settlement and timber harvesting, the Acadian forest is not growing back as it was, but it's subject to borealization. This means that exposure-resistant species that are well adapted to the frequent large-scale disturbances common in the boreal forest are increasingly abundant. These include jack pine, balsam fir, black spruce, white birch, and poplar. Forest ecosystems support large carnivores such as bobcat, Canada lynx, and black bear, and the large herbivores moose, wild-tailed deer, the white-tailed deer. Fiddlehead greens are harvested from the ostrich fern, which grows on riverbanks. Furbishlusa, a perennial herb endemic. Many wetlands are being disrupted by the highly invasive introduced species purple loosestrife. Many wetlands are being disrupted by the highly invasive introduced species purple loosestrife. Many wetlands are being disrupted by the highly invasive introduced species purple loosestrifes. The deer population of the province has dropped by 70% since 1985. Geology. Bedrock types range from 1 billion to 200 million years old. Much of the bedrock in the west and north derives from the ocean deposits in Octavian that were subject to folding and igneous intrusion, and that were eventually covered with lava during Paleozoic, peaking during the Acadian orogeny. Topography. New Brunswick lies entirely within the Appalachian Range Mountains. The rivers of New Brunswick drain to either the Gulf of St. Lawrence to the east or the Bay of Fundy to the south. These watersheds include lands in Quebec and Maine. New Brunswick and the rest of Maritime Peninsula was covered by thick layers of ice during the last glacial period. Wisconsin Glacier, it cut U-shaped valleys, U as a U, the letter U-shaped valleys in the St. John and Pixqueal River valleys, and pushed granite boulders from the Comanche Highlands south and east, leaving them as erratics when the ice receded at the end of the Wisconsin glaciation, along with deposits such as estuaries between Woodstock and St. George, which are today's sources of sand and gravel. Demographics. The 4 Atlantic provinces are Canada's least populated, with New Brunswick the third least populous at 775,621, up 3.8% since 2016. A more recent estimate is that the population surpassed 800,000 in March 2022 of this year. A more recent estimate is that the population surpassed 800,000 in March 2022 of this year. A more recent estimate is that the population surpassed 800,000 in March 2022 of this year. The Atlantic provinces also have higher rural populations. New Brunswick was largely rural until 1951. Since then, the rural-urban split has been roughly even. New Brunswick's 170 municipalities cover 8.6% of the province landmass but are home to 65.3% of this population. The three major urban areas are in the south of the province and are Greater Moncton, population 126,424, Greater St. John, population 122,989, and Greater Fredericton, population 85,688. Under the 2022 Canadian Consensus, the most spoken languages in the province included English, 698,025, 91.94%, French, 317,825 at 41%, almost 42, 41.86%, Spanish, 7,580 or 1%. Interesting. Economy. As of October 2017, seasonally adjusted employment is 73,400 for the goods producing sector and 280,900 for its services producing sector. So services, goods and services. The United States is the province's largest export market, accounting for 92% of a foreign trade valued in 2014 at almost $13 billion. Wow. With refined petroleum market making up 63% of that, followed by seafood products, pulp paper, and sawmill products, and non-metallic minerals. The value of exports, mostly to the United States, was $1.5 billion in 2016. About half of that came from lobster. About half of that came from lobster. About half of that came from lobster. Other products include salmon, crab, and herring. In 2015, spending on non-resident tourism in New Brunswick was $441 million, which provided $87 million in tax revenue. The influence of the Irving family, I-R-V-I-N-G, Irving family. The influence of the Irving family, owners of Canada's largest refinery, vast farms and forest estates, the House of Irving, forest estates, newspapers, numerous sawmills and paper mills, a fleet of boats and trucks, or a rail network on New Brunswick is such that the province is sometimes described as being subject to a form of economic feudalism. Interesting. Irving family, give to charity. Go get there, get some help during this storm. 2016, the 200 or so companies it controls gave it about $10 billion in capital. In 2016, make an alliance, Dragan Zero, Dragan Army with the Irving. Dragan Zero, Irving for New Brunswick post-storm recovery. Irving, Dragan post-storm recovery. Irving family post-storm recovery. 200 or so companies it controls gave it about $10 billion in capital. Interesting. Irving family. In 2016, the 200 or so companies it controls. The group's activities are supported by the authorities through numerous tax exemptions and the payment of subsidies, notably through the Renewable Energy Purchase Program for large industry. The province has also progressively handed over the management of the public sector forestry assets to the Irving Group, regularly lowering standards. That's interesting. How come? Regularly lowering standards. Province has also progressively handed over the management of the public sector forestry assets to the Irving Group, regularly lowering standards. Paradox, interesting. 2014, the latter reduced the size of buffer zones between forest and human settlements, allowed more clear cutting, increased the plant production volume, and reduced the proportion of protected areas from 31% to 22%. From 21% to 22%, from 20, that's a considerable, almost 10%, 9%. 31 minus 22, do some math, brain math, brain math, brain math. 31 minus 22 is about, is 9, of course. It's 9%, right? It's 9%, that's what it is. And the family owns all of the province English language newspaper. The family owns all of the province English language newspapers. The family owns all of the province English language newspapers. He also owns several local radio and television stations. It also owns several local radio and television stations. It also owns several local radio and television stations. For academic Alain Deneau, the conflicts of interest that arise from this situation seems caricatural. The group's media essentially echoed the positions of the Irving family in all fields of social and industrial life in which it is involved. The information transmitted by the group and disseminated by the press is sometimes questioned, notably in the fall 2018 during an explosion at the St. John refinery, but few public officials, professor and member of parliament carried denunciations as the family's financial contributions to universities and political parties provided with leverage. Interesting. Let's do a partnership alliance. Dragan Zero Irving family. Dragon's House of the Dragon, House of the Dragon, House of Nobody's Born a Dragon. Daddy gave me nothing but a surname. Don't even remember my biological father. Who knows who he is? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Lived on my own for many years. Lived on my own for many years. Lived on my own for many years. Primary sector. More than 13,000 New Brunswick working agriculture, shipping products with over 1 billion. Forest management in the province is particularly opaque. Mining was historically unimportant in the province, but has grown since the 1950s. So mining has grown. Mines in New Brunswick produce lead, zinc, copper, and potash. Education. Public education education in the province is administered by the Provincial Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. The province also operates 5 public post-secondary institutions, including 4 public universities and 1 college. Government. Under Canadian federalism, power is divided between federal and provincial governments. Among areas under federal jurisdictions are citizenship, foreign affairs, national defense, fisheries, criminal law, indigenous policies, and many others. Provincial jurisdictions cover land. The parliament system of government, modeled by the British Westminster system. 49 representatives, nearly always members of political party, are elected to the Legislative Assembly of New Brunswick. The head of government is the Premier of New Brunswick. Normally the leader of the party or coalition with the most seats in the Legislative Assembly. Governance is handled by the Executive Council cabinet with more than 32 ministries. Ceremonial duties of the monarchy in New Brunswick are mostly carried out by Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick. Under amendments to the Provincial Legislative Assembly in 2007, a provincial election is held every 4 years. The 2 largest political parties are the New Brunswick Liberal Association, the Progressive Conservative Party of New Brunswick. Since the 2018 election, minor parties are the Green Party of New Brunswick and People's Alliance. Administrative divisions. Historically, the province was divided into counties with elected governments, but this was abolished in 1966. While county governments have been abolished in New Brunswick, counties continue to be used as consensus divisions by Statistics Canada and as an organizational unit along with parishes for registration of real estate and its taxation. Provincial finances. Energy. Publicly owned NB Power operates 13 of New Brunswick generating stations, deriving power from fuel, oil, and diesel. 1,497 megawatts. Hydro, 800, good hydro, it's clear. 889 megawatts. Nuclear, 660 megawatts. And coal, 467. There are 30 active natural gas production sites in 2012. Transportation. The Department of Transportation and Infrastructure maintains government facilities and the province's highway network and ferries. The Trans-Canada Highway is not under federal jurisdiction and traverses the province from Edmonton following the St. John River Valley to Fredericton, Moncton, and onto Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Rail via Rail's Ocean Service, which connects Montreal to Halifax. That's where we've been. My sister and me. Via Rail's Ocean Service, which connects Montreal to Halifax. It's currently the oldest continuously operate passenger route in North America. Interesting. Learning. Via Rail's Ocean Service, which connects Montreal to Halifax, is currently the oldest continuously operated passenger route in North America. Via Rail's Ocean Service, which connects Montreal to Halifax, is currently the oldest continuously operated passenger route in North America. Via Rail's ocean service, which connects Montreal to Halifax, is currently the oldest continuously operated passenger route in North America, which stops from west to east at Camden, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Petit Rucker, Rogersville, Moncton, and Sackville. Canadian National Railway operates freight services along the same route, as well as a subdivision from Moncton to St. John. The New Brunswick Southern Railway, a division of J.D. Irving Limited, together with its sister company Eastern Maine Railway, form a continuous 305-kilometer, 190-mile main line connecting St. John and Brownsville Junction, Maine. Culture: there are about 61 historic places in New Brunswick. Arts: Theater New Brunswick, Symphony New Brunswick, Music of New Brunswick. There's arts, there's visual arts, literature, media, news. New Brunswick has 4 daily newspapers, the Times and Transcript, serving New Brunswick, Eastern New Brunswick. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, has Anglophone television and radio operations in Fredericton. Now about the storm. Radio. There are 34 radio stations licensed in New Brunswick, broadcasting in English or French. There are 34 radio stations licensed in New Brunswick, broadcasting in English and French. There are 34 radio stations licensed in New Brunswick, broadcasting in English or French. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. It's exactly 3 p.m. 3:03, 3:05 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm going to go cook because I'm hungry and brain muscle for Nova Scotians, New Brunswickers, those living in Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and if it's going to reach New Labrador, Fiona, for the Maritimes, for the Atlantic. This has been yours truly, Special Mind Training with Coffee with yours truly, Dragan. My heart is with you, and some brain and some muscle there, and go, clear, protect the people, the citizens, protect the people, protect the citizens, protect the people. During the storm, clear the roads, save as much houses as you can, hydro, clear the trees that have fallen, clear the Dragan Army, Dragon Zero.